I want to introduce to you Tom Clark. He has worked for Social Security for 33 years, and he is our subject matter expert. He's going to take questions, so I'm going to turn it over to him. He'll tell you how the format's going to go, and then if you have any questions, if you'll raise your hand, Julia or I, either one, will come to you with a microphone so that everybody can hear your questions, okay?
All right. All right, good afternoon. I do want you to feel free to ask your questions, and I'll stay at the end as long as you have questions, but you don't have to wait till the end. If you have questions about something to talk about, ask it then. I like to keep it informal, make it a conversation, not a lecture. So you have a copy of my PowerPoint presentation, but I won't be using PowerPoint itself because I like to keep it informal. So you feel more free to talk back to me and ask those questions. So I've done about 7,000 presentations, about 6,000 when I worked at Social Security, about another 1,000 since I retired. So you're not likely to ask me anything I hadn't heard before. I won't say you won't because I found that some people think that's a challenge when I say that, but you're probably not going to. But you won't make me lose my place anyway. So if you have a question, interrupt me. That's no problem. And one reason I don't use PowerPoint because it doesn't inhibit the questions, but also I would never use one at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, no matter what. That's the very worst time of the whole day to dim the lights and start flashing pictures on the wall. Is right after lunch. So I never use one at 1 o'clock in the afternoon anyway. Now we're going to talk about 2 laws that apply to people who receive a pension based on work not covered by Social Security. So we want to keep those 2 straight. One law is called the Windfall Elimination Provision, and that addresses how receiving a pension based on work that wasn't covered by Social Security, such as the pension you'll get from your work here from TMRS, how that will affect the benefits you maybe due based on your own work under Social Security if you got your 40 credits. That's all Windfall addresses. The other law called Government Pension Offset, that addresses how receiving that kind of pension, a pension based on work not covered by Social Security, can affect the benefits you might be due on a spouse's Social Security record. So the Windfall law talks about benefits on your own record. Government Pension also talks about spouses and widows' benefits on your spouse's record. And the purpose of those laws has nothing to do with double dipping. No matter what people try to tell you, there's nothing wrong with double dipping. The purpose of those laws is to treat you equally with people who pay into Social Security on every job they had, so you don't get a better deal out of Social Security by not paying in than the next door neighbor gets who paid into Social Security for 35 or 40 years on every job they had, and I'll explain that when we get to that. Before we go into the retirement parts, though, let me briefly talk about the other parts of Social Security, because based on my 33 years working there, I can assure you those retirement benefits are actually the least important part of the program. They also pay survivors' benefits and disability benefits. Most people are aware that Social Security insures us against loss of income due to premature death or disability, but most people don't know how important those benefits are. But as you just heard me say, I think they're far more significant than retirement benefits for a lot of reasons, but the number one reason is human nature. We look forward to retirement. We make plans for retirement. I mean, you're evidence of that, taking time out of your lives to come here and make plans for retirement. So the fact that sitting in this room now means you're good planners, because a lot of people should be here and aren't here, right? So since you're good planners, I guess we can assume if this seminar had been advertised to you as a seminar on preparing to become disabled, you'd all be here right now, right? That's the human nature part of it. We don't think it's going to happen to us. We don't think we're going to become disabled or die before we reach retirement age. Unfortunately, that assumption turns out to be wrong for a shocking amount of people. 1 out of 3 workers will either die or become so disabled they can't do any type of work at all before they reach retirement age. 1 out of 3. The great majority of those 1 out of 3 don't die before retirement age, which is the good news, but they become disabled before that age, which is much, much more expensive, which is the bad news. On those survivors' benefits, if a parent should die that's worked and paid into Social Security, they'll pay a check to each child until that child turns 18. With this many people here, at least 5 people in the room right now either receive those benefits when they were a child because a parent died, or receive them for their own children because their spouse died at a young age. And in 33 years working at Social Security, I never saw one family when that wage earner died that didn't need the money, because nobody buys enough life insurance to replace the earnings they'd lose if one of those wage earners were to die. Nobody does. People think $1 million is a lot of life insurance. If you have a 35-year-old making $100,000 a year and 3 little kids under 7, that $1 million is only 10 years of paychecks. Those kids are still kids when that money's run out. Like I said, I never saw one family that didn't need that money. And in my opinion, the most important part of Social Security is the disability benefits, because becoming disabled is the most expensive thing a person can do in their lifetime. If somebody becomes disabled, their paychecks stop, but their expenses skyrocket. And there's a very strict requirement medically to draw disability from Social Security. You have to be so disabled, the person has to be so disabled they can't do any type of job that people do for a living that exists anywhere in the 50 states to qualify for disability and Social Security. Very strict medical requirement. Unfortunately, 1 out of 4 workers will meet that requirement and actually draw those benefits before they reach retirement age. 25% of all workers become that disabled before retirement age. But you're here for retirement type benefits, so let's go on into that. So first of all, let's talk about what Social Security does call retirement benefits. Yes?
I'm sorry, just back up 1 second. So for the disability, I get as an adult, what if you have a child that's disabled, like autism, do they fall under the same rules, like they can't work anywhere in the 50 states?
Yeah, basically it's the same medical requirement, yes, but you're probably talking about a different program, though. Social Security, a person basically has to work and paid into Social Security.
Oh.
Social Security, though, administers another program called SSI, which stands for Supplemental Security Income. It's not Social Security, not paid for Social Security taxes, but it is administered by specialists on SSI at the Social Security offices, and it's based on need. And so if you have a child who's disabled, the parent's income can affect whether they can get SSI or not, because SSI is based on need. But when that child turns 18, the parent's income no longer affects their eligibility. So a lot of kids become eligible for SSI at age 18. And if you have a child who's disabled, you need to, if you haven't done this, you need to do some planning, talk to somebody who can set up something called a special needs trust. You've done that? Okay. So that would be SSI that child would be drawing. And at age 18, the parent's income no longer affects their eligibility. So retirement benefits, when we're talking about Social Security, that term retirement benefits is not a generic term. It has a specific meaning. Retirement benefits at Social Security means the benefit we can receive based on our own work at a certain age, which is 62 at a minimum age. So a person has to be at least 62 to receive retirement benefits from Social Security. Of course, they also have to work and paid into Social Security for a certain length of time to qualify for those benefits, which most people take for granted because it only takes 10 years of work to qualify for retirement benefits. But of course, you can't take that for granted because you don't pay into Social Security here at the city. They measure that work in something called credits. You have to have earned 40 credits under Social Security any time in your lifetime to qualify for retirement benefits from Social Security. How many of you know you have your 40 credits already? Okay, the great majority of you, and that's usually the way it is. If you got your 40 credits, you will receive your own Social Security retirement benefits. You will receive a fair amount based on what you paid in. I'll explain what I mean by that in a little bit. Now, it seems like every time I speak to a group of people who work outside of Social Security, which is quite often, it's the third time this week, as a matter of fact, there's somebody in the room that's got 38 or 39 credits, that close to having their 40th credit. If that was me, or even if I was a little further away, I'd go out and get those last few credits. It does not take much work to earn a credit, but the difference between having 39 credits and having 40 credits is not receiving a check or receiving a check every month for the rest of your life that goes up with inflation with the cost of living raises for the rest of your life, because 40 is the minimum. The amount to earn a credit goes up with inflation, so it'll be a little higher come January. But in 2021, you earn 1 credit for each $1,470 of earnings covered by Social Security, but you can't earn more than 4 credits in a calendar year. So Social Security covered earnings of 1,470 this year earns a credit, but you can't earn more than 4 in a year. So if you had a part-time job this year covered by Social Security and you made $1,470 on that job, you'd earn 1 credit. If you made 2 times $1,470, you'd earn 2 credits this year, and so on, but you can't earn more than 4 credits in a calendar year. Any questions about how to earn a credit?
So if you work all year and make $1,470, then that's
1 credit. Yeah, they don't know when you worked. All they know is what's on the W-2. That's why they don't call them quarters any longer, because when they did it by a calendar quarter, employers had to report to Social Security 4 times a year. To lessen the burden, way back in '78, they changed it to just using the W-2 total earnings. Yes? Okay, remember that Social Security statement that they used to mail to you before your birthday every year? They don't mail to you automatically, but you can download it off Social Security's website anytime you choose, which is socialsecurity.gov, socialsecurity.gov. You download that Social Security statement, and the very top of page 2, it tells you how many credits you have. People always seem to miss it, but it is the very first thing it tells you on the top of page 2 of that statement. Now, credits have one purpose only: to have enough to draw the check, which means they stop counting once you get to 40. So if you have 40 or more credits, at the top of page 2 of that statement, it just says you've earned enough credits. If you have less than 40, it tells you exactly how many you have at the top of page 2.
So what if you were a stay-at-home mom for raising your kids until they were grown and off to college, which is what I did?
Yeah.
I mean, so you work some and you don't get anything back from Social Security?
You have to have 40 to get it. Yeah, that is the minimum. So that's why I say if you have 39 credits, the only way to get your money is to get that 40th credit. Yeah, because 40 is the minimum. Yeah. Okay, so if you got your 40 credits, you can receive those benefits as early as age 62 if you are retired then. At 62, those benefits are reduced a little bit for each month you're younger than your full retirement age. And on this handout, it's right there on that first page. You can see it's also on the in a bigger one on the PowerPoint slides. Back in 1983, because people were living a lot longer, Congress passed this law, which, as you can see, raises that full retirement age gradually to 67. But no matter what yours is, if you are retired when you turn 62 and have your 40 credits, you can start reduced benefits then. So 62 hasn't changed for reduced benefits. To give you an idea about why Congress did raise that full retirement age, a few years ago, back when I was still working at Social Security, I was in Baltimore at their headquarters for a meeting. The actuaries of the program came to speak to us at this meeting. They told us that of the people born 1960 and later, who have 67 for their full retirement age, they think there's a good chance they'll live an average of almost 30 years after they start receiving Social Security retirement benefits. An average of almost 30 years. And for the last 15 years or so, the fastest growing part of the population by percentage has been the people over 100 years old. So anyway, that's why Congress did raise that full retirement age. But no matter what yours is, if you got your 40 credits and you are retired at 62, you can start reduced benefits then. So the question is, should you? Well, it's your decision, of course. I can give you the information you need to make an informed decision. First of all, it's a month-by-month reduction if you take the benefit before your full retirement age. Each month you're closer to this age when you start those checks, the checks will be a little higher. If you start your checks when you're 62 years and 7 months old, that check will be a little higher for the rest of your life than it would be if you started the month before. So it's a month-by-month reduction. If you start exactly the month you turn 62, at that point, you would receive between 70 and 75% of what you would have received had you waited until your full retirement age. The exact percentage you'd get if you start exactly the month you turn 62 depends on where you fall on this chart, what your full retirement age is. So if you got your 40 credits and you are retired when you turn 62, at that point you have a decision. Should you take those reduced benefits? Should you pass them up and wait and draw your full benefit at your full retirement age? If you are retired at 62 and have your 40 credits, and you decide, no, I'm going to pass them up and wait until my full retirement age, by waiting, you would have a bigger check each month for the rest of your life, but you would have passed up all those checks you could have received in exchange for that higher monthly check. With that higher check you get by waiting, it would take you about 12 years drawing that higher check to recover the money you passed up. So in other words, if you take the reduced benefit, you'd be ahead 12 years past your full retirement age. That would be the break-even point. Now, I know 12 years sounds like a long time to recover that money, but keep in mind the average person who starts today is going to draw those checks for more than 12 years. Think about it, it's a much different world. When our grandparents were 70, they were really, really old at that age, weren't they? Now when somebody dies in their 70s, in their late 70s, we think they died young. It's a much different world. The reason it pays most people to wait as long as possible is because when people start living longer, insurance companies and pension systems can change their tables anytime they choose, which they've done. That's why life insurance costs less now than it used to. We're living longer. Social Security tables are based in law. It takes an act of Congress to change them, which they haven't touched other than raising full retirement age a little bit, and we're living longer than they thought we were going to when they did that. Now, Social Security started paying reduced benefits, meaning benefits before full retirement age, in 1958. And at that time, full retirement age was 65. So that means the reduction for taking your benefit early is based on how many more years the average 65-year-old lived in 1958. We're living on average a lot more years past 65 than we did in 1958. That's why it pays most people to wait as long as possible. But nobody's most people, so your decision to make. Now, people do ask me all the time, they say, when's the best time for me to start taking those benefits? Wanting me to make that decision for them. I thought about this a whole lot. I can still only come up with one way to answer that question. And that is, tell me the date you're going to die. I'll tell you it's time to start taking those checks. Otherwise, my crystal ball and my calculators doesn't work that good. But if you do have some kind of inside information, and you know you're like some people that I used to visit when I worked at Social Security, you might want to wait and take that full benefit at your full retirement age. Social Security does a special project every couple of years. In this project, they go out and visit all the people over 100 years old who are receiving Social Security benefits. You might not think that would be a big project, but remember, it is the fastest growing part of the population. There's a purpose behind this project. This is a security audit. The reason they go see all the people over 100 in person is so they can verify that they are still alive, that they haven't died and somebody hid that fact and kept cashing the checks. Now, they don't tell them, that's why they're out there talking to them, but a lot of them figured it out on their own, I found. I used to help a lot of the local offices all around the DFW area with this project because they needed help with it. It's a big project. There are so many people over 100. A few years ago, they had to change the project. They can no longer go visit all the people over 100 each time. There's way too many. So now when this project comes around, they just go see the ones they haven't seen yet, the ones who have turned 100 since the last time they did the project. Because just this year, just in 2021, just in the DFW area, more than 1,000 people will turn 100. That does not even count the ones already over 100 January 1st. That's 1,000 more turn 100 just in the Metroplex in this 1 year. Not only are there a lot more of them, they're a whole lot healthier group than they used to be. Of these 1,000 people that are turning 100 in the DFW area this year, the great majority are not in a nursing home. Most of them still live out in the community. Quite a few of them still live in their own homes, all by themselves, taking care of themselves. And I really do mean taking care of themselves. I've seen some of these people mowing their lawns at 100 years old when I drove up to their house. One year, I had to go to a person's job site to find him. He was still working at 100. He was not working for the city of Plano, by the way, but he was still working. Let me tell you about one lady people always find amusing. We visited her quite a few years back. We visited all the people over 100 each time. She was 103 years old at this time we went to see her. She lived all by herself in her own home on the west side of Fort Worth, which is the old part of town. She's just in great shape physically, really sharp mentally. As we were talking to her that day, she got curious. She said, well, who's the oldest person you have on your list? We looked, we said, well, the oldest person in this area is a lady right here in Fort Worth that's 108 years old. Well, this 103-year-old's reaction to that was, 108? Wow, now that's old. So if you're going to be like her, that 108-year-old, and pay to wait before retirement, you have money ahead. Your choice when you want to take those benefits. Now, once you reach this full retirement age, there's no limit on your earnings. When you're younger than this age, there's a limit how much you can make from work without affecting your benefits. But once you reach full retirement age, you can keep on working full-time, receive your full benefits. But even then, some people do not take their checks at that point. Some people even wait till 70 to start those retirement benefits. Why would they do that? Because of something called delayed retirement credits. For each month from your full retirement age on this chart, until age 70 that you don't take a retirement benefit from Social Security, when you do take that check, they'll add something extra called a delayed retirement credit. It's added for each month you wait, over 12 months, so it totals 8%. So if you're full retirement age of 66, and you don't take those benefits until 70, 4 years later, your check would be 32% higher for the rest of your life, 8% for each of those 4 years. But don't delay past 70 because they quit adding extra credits at 70. And also those delayed retirement credits only apply to retirement benefits, which are benefits based on our own work. Delaying a spouse's or widow's benefit past that age would not increase those. So they just apply to benefits based on our own work. So before I go on to talk about the windfall elimination provision, how your pension affects those retirement benefits, any questions about that overview of retirement benefits in general?
So you said there's no limit on how much you can earn at full retirement age.
Right.
Is there is a limit then if you take early retirement?
Yeah, somebody's younger than full retirement age, and this goes up with inflation, but somebody's younger than full retirement age, if they're working and making more than $18,960 this year, for every $2 they earn above that, $1 withheld from the benefits. So if they made $10,000 above that, they'd have to withhold $5,000 from their benefits. They withhold one for every two they earn above $18,960. And that's only what you're working for that counts toward that, just what you're actually working for right then. So if you're still working full-time, at 62, you're probably not due benefits because of that earnings limit until you either retire or reach full retirement age. Any others before I go on to talk about the windfall provision? Okay, so let's talk about the windfall elimination provision. And it's very well named, as you'll see. If you have your 40 Social Security credits, and you also receive a pension based on work not covered by Social Security, like your pension you'll get from TMRS for your work here for this city, you will draw your own Social Security, but they will compute your benefits differently. Now, why would they compute your benefits differently just because you're receiving a pension based on work not covered by Social Security? Once again, it's so you don't get a whole lot better deal of Social Security by not paying in than everybody else gets who paid in on every job they ever had. The reason they compute your benefits differently, if you receive a pension based on work not covered by Social Security, goes back to the very way they computed benefits ever since Social Security started. Now, it is true, the more you make and the more you earn under Social Security, the higher your check is. That is true. So the high-income worker gets a bigger check than the middle-income worker, who gets a bigger check than the low-income worker. That is all true, but this is social insurance. The social part of Social Security is the computation is skewed to the low-income worker. That low-income worker's check is not as big as somebody who made more money, but they get a higher percentage of their earnings replaced by Social Security. It's a very necessary part of the program because that low-income worker doesn't have a pension. And of course, they never had any money to invest. That's the 250,000 people in this area living on Social Security only, got to pay them enough to live on. Well, what's happening before the windfall law is passed is somebody like some of you who pretty much spent your whole working life not paying into Social Security, working at the city here, but you worked a little in high school and college, you moonlighted every now and then, like when your kids were in college for some extra money, you barely got your 40 credits. Before the windfall law is passed, they treated you like an extremely low-income worker because they just used those Social Security covered earnings in that computation. Over a whole lifetime, those earnings were so much lower than genuine low-income workers have that it magnified the advantage. Those people got a bigger advantage than real low-income workers got. They got such an advantage that before the windfall law was passed, I saw a lot of people in that situation who got back every dime they paid in Social Security taxes in their whole lifetimes in their first 5 Social Security checks. Every 5 checks they got from Social Security for the rest of their life, they got back all the tax they paid to Social Security. Well, that'd be a fantastic deal. It wasn't fair, because that guy's next door neighbor who paid into Social Security for 35 or 40 years on every job they ever had, they still get a good deal. It's going to take them 5 years to draw on their checks to get back all the taxes they pay. So all the windfall law does is take away that advantage low-income workers have from people who are not really low-income workers. And they know you're not a low-income worker because you're receiving this pension based on all this work that's not on Social Security's records. So that's the reason for the law. Now, I'm not going to teach you how to compute those benefits differently, because to do that first, I'd have to teach you how to compute them the regular way. I actually used to train new employees at Social Security when I worked there on that very subject. That was a 7-hour session. I'm never going to do that again, and you're not going to sit through it. You don't want to sit through it one time. We're talking about dollars here. I'm going to tell you how to adjust your estimates. Because if you have your 40 credits, when you go download your Social Security statement from the Social Security's website, it gives you an estimate in today's dollars of your benefit amount at full retirement age. We'll start with that. I'll tell you how to adjust it to get a better estimate in today's dollars of your benefit amount under the windfall provision. And it's going to be a rough estimate because the way they compute benefits, they don't really know till this month what the figure is going to be for people turning 62 next year. And so if you're 3 or 4 years away, even your estimates gets to a certain point. So it's a little bit rough, but it gets you in the ballpark for planning purposes. And first of all, we're going to assume everybody's fully affected by the windfall law right now, to keep it simple. If you've got a lot of work under Social Security, you might not be. I'll talk about that exception next. But just to keep this simple right here, let's assume everybody in the room is fully affected by the windfall law. So if you got your 40 credits, go download your Social Security statement from socialsecurity.gov. Look at your estimate at full retirement age. If that estimate is $896 a month or more, if that estimate at full retirement age is $896 a month on up to infinity, subtract $498 from it, that'll give you a better estimate of your benefit amount at full retirement age under windfall. So if your estimate is $896 a month or more at full retirement age on that statement, subtract $498 from it, that'll give you a better estimate, if you're fully affected by this law, of your benefit amount at full retirement age. If your estimate is less than $896 a month, just take that estimate and divide by 2. So if your estimate is $400 a month, then half that, $200, would be a better estimate. It'll actually be slightly less than half, but that gets you close enough, once again, for planning purposes. So to adjust your estimate for windfall, if your estimate is $896 a month or more at full retirement age, subtract $498 from it. If it's less than $896 a month, just take that estimate and divide by 2. Any questions about how to adjust it for windfall? Yes?
What if your son is full retirement age, but still working for the city, not drawing a pension? Would it behoove that person to go ahead and apply for Social Security benefits?
Absolutely, because, and I was going to mention this at the end of everything, but since you brought it up, these laws, the windfall and the government pension offset, they don't apply if you can't draw your pension. If you're still working full-time for the city at full retirement age, there's no limit on your earnings. You can't draw your pension, so you draw more money without those 2 laws applying to you until you retire and start your pension up.
So does it ping you later when
Oh,
they,
no.
so they won't know that I get a pension later on in life?
Well, yeah, they're going to know. You're just going to tell them when you retire, you're going to tell them so you don't get overpaid. I'm starting to draw my pension now, then they'll apply the windfall or the government pension offset to your benefits
From
and reduce
that
your check
point
then.
on.
But you just do that. You do that full amount till you can draw the pension. Those laws don't affect you if you can't get your pension yet.
Right.
So if you're still working full time for the city, you can't draw your pension because you got to retire to get your pension.
Right.
Yeah. So anybody's going to work past full retirement age, full time for the city here, contact Social Security at that point and file for whatever you do on your record or your spouse's, because those laws wouldn't affect you until you actually did retire. Good thinking. Yes. She's never going to make it up to the microphone. You're going to get your exercise, Fanny.
Yeah, I need it. Thanks.
Fanny. How much does that $498 cap tend to go up over the years?
Well, let's see, last year, that's for people turning 62 this year, by the way. It's not just everybody, that's for people turning 62 this year is how much, back to the effect of 498. Last year it was, let me think what it was, because I just kind of memorized 1 year's things at a time, but I believe last year it was 486. So it's not a whole lot of difference. It depends on how much, that goes up by how much average wages go up during the year, which means it's probably going to go up more this next year because not just prices, but wages are up too this year. So it'll probably be a little more of an increase this time. Yes?
Yeah, I thought that windfall rule didn't apply if you had had 30 years.
Yeah, I haven't got to that yet. That's the exception. Remember I said we're going to assume everybody's fully affected? Haven't got to that exception yet. We're almost there. Okay, so after you adjust your benefits for windfall, I'm going to ask you one other thing, but I'm going to give you a little warning here. Do not take this next step if you want to complain about the windfall law any longer, because after you take this next step, you see exactly why the law is passed. You won't be able to complain in good faith. On that Social Security statement you're going to download, on page 3, about halfway down, they total to the dollar how much tax you paid to Social Security in your lifetime. So divide your total taxes paid to Social Security in your lifetime, divide that total by your new adjusted windfall benefit amount to see how many months it'll take you to get all your taxes back. What you'll find is the windfall law did not do its job totally. It was supposed to bring you back even with somebody your age who paid in Social Security on every job they ever had. So it takes them 5 years to get all the money back. It ought to take you 5 years, right? That'd be a fair law. It didn't do it. Even after windfall applies to you, you'll get all your Social Security taxes back 2 to 5 times faster than somebody your age who paid in Social Security on every job they ever had. Just before the law passed, you got your money back 20 times faster than everybody else did. Let me give you a couple examples. This first one I like. It is extreme, but it is true because this guy has worked a long, long time ago. But back when I was still working at Social Security, I was speaking at a retirement seminar at Weatherford ISD. They don't pay any Social Security there. It's affected just like you are by these laws. A retired principal came to the meeting complaining about the windfall law. That's why he came, I think. He said his check was only $130 a month. I was doing something different later that day, so I had my Social Security laptop out in the car. So I was talking to him after the seminar. So I went out and got my laptop, looked up his record. He'd paid a total of $250 in Social Security taxes in his lifetime. Without windfall, he got all back in his first check. As it was, he got his money back every 2 checks for the rest of his life. He was like 86, 87 years old at that time. So think about his return on his investment there. Let me give you another example, though, much more common to you, because I see almost the same example everywhere I go. Last time I saw it was right before we shut down, right before the pandemic. I was speaking at a retirement seminar for the city of Dallas. They don't pay any Social Security either, so affected like you are. A woman had brought her Social Security statement with her. It said she's going to get $300 a month. So after windfall, she's going to get about $150 a month. She'd paid a total of $1,800 in Social Security tax in her lifetime. So even after windfall applies to her, she'll get all her money back in her first 12 checks, 5 times faster than everybody else. After seeing those kind of examples thousands of times in my career, when somebody tells me now that they're affected by the windfall provision, this is what I tell them. Congratulations. Because that means Social Security is the best investment you've ever made in your lifetime and ever could make in your lifetime. Nobody gets that kind of return on investment. If I get all the money I put in my 401k back every 12 months the rest of my life, I wouldn't have spent the summer in Texas. I'd have been in Waikiki, right? So that's why I say it's a fair law. You're still getting your money back faster than everybody else, just not 20 times faster like you used to. Now, some of you may not be affected by this law at all, or some of you may not be fully affected. If you have 30 years of work under Social Security of a certain amount, which I'll talk about in a minute, but if you've got 30 years of work under Social Security of a certain amount, you don't look like a low-income worker in that computation, and windfall does not apply to you, do not adjust your estimate. If you have between 21 and 30 years of work under Social Security of a certain amount, as you get closer to 30, you're affected less by the windfall provision. It phases out. So how do you determine how many years you have under Social Security for this purpose? Well, that Social Security statement I keep telling you you're going to download, at the top of page 3, it shows every year you worked under Social Security exactly how much you made. Now make sure you're looking at the Social Security column, not the Medicare column, because most of not all you are paying Medicare tax, but you're not paying Social Security tax. Look at the Social Security earnings column, and then you're going to go to Social Security's website, socialsecurity.gov, and their internal search engine, put in windfall or WEP, and go to their fact sheet on the windfall provision. Look on page 2 of that, lower left-hand corner. It has a chart with every year from 1937 to the present, and a money amount to the right of each of those years. That money amount is how much earnings covered by Social Security you have to have in that calendar year to count as one of those 21 to 30 years. I got a couple of them memorized. If in 1980 you had a job covered by Social Security and made $5,100 or more that year on that job, that would be 1 year. If you had that same job the next year, paying into Social Security, and made $5,550, that would be 2 years. If you got 30 of those years of that much earnings under Social Security, then windfall does not apply to you. If you have between 21 and 30, and they call those substantial years of earnings. If you have between 21 and 30 substantial years of earnings, you're affected less as you get closer to 30. So I guess you have 30, right? Anybody else have 30 of those years probably? Good, good. Anybody here think will end up with between 21 and 30 of those substantial years of earnings? Okay, this is what you're gonna do. If you end up with between 21 and 30 substantial years of earnings, instead of subtracting 498 from your estimate, like I said at the start, subtract 1/10 of that, $49.80 from your estimate for each year you're under having 30. So if you had 29 substantial years, just subtract $49.80 from your estimate. If you had 28, subtract 2 times $49.80 from your estimate. So if you have between 21 and 30, subtract $49.80 from your estimate for each year you're under having 30. If you got 30 or more, you're not affected at all. If you have less than 21 of those substantial years, you do what I said at the start. If it's $896 a month or more, subtract $498. Less than $896, take half. Before we go on to spousal benefits, let me pause again. Any questions about that or retirement benefits in general before I go on to the spouses and widows benefits? Okay. In our minds, I want to draw us a bright line we're going to step across. Because people get those two laws confused. They get the windfall law confused with government pension offset, mix them all up together. There's no bleed through between these. So this side of the bright line that we just got through with retirement benefits and windfall, none of that applies over here on this side of the bright line with spousal benefits and widows. Nothing over here applies back over there. So no bleed through. Two totally separate benefits, two totally separate laws. I'm going to do the same thing with spouses and widows benefits I did with retirement. Talk about them in general first to get everybody on the same page, then I'll talk about the government pension offset law. So let's talk about spouses benefits first. And when we say spouses benefits, that means both members of the couple are living. So to receive benefits on your living spouse's record, you have to be at least 62. And second, you have to not be entitled to more based on your own work. Everybody that works has an offset. People paying the Social Security have an offset. They have to take their own Social Security retirement benefits first, and that offset's what they can draw on their spouse's record. So if they're entitled to more on their own work and they can draw on their spouse's record, that's what they get is that higher amount they've earned based on their own work. They can't receive anything on their spouse's record. Remember that because that's the reason for the government pension offset law we're going to talk about. So, as I said, to draw on a living spouse's record, somebody has to be at least age 62 and not be entitled to more based on their own work. When your spouse is living, anything you can receive on their work record is based on half of their unreduced full retirement age amount. So when your spouse is living, anything you get on their record is based on half. If your spouse is deceased, then any benefits they pay on that deceased spouse record, they call widow's benefits, or it could be widower's benefits. Exactly the same for men or women. It's usually widows, so I was caught that, but it's exactly the same for men or women. Unlike a spousal benefit that's based on half, a widow's benefit is based on the full amount of the deceased spouse's check if they're drawing Social Security when they died. If they died before they ever drew those benefits, their widow's benefit is based on their full unreduced amount. Let's take an example of the most common situation with widow's benefits. Let's say we have a husband and a wife both drawing their own Social Security. Say the husband's check is $2,000 a month, the wife's is $1,400. If he dies before her, if she's at her full retirement age or older, her check would go up to exactly what his was. So in this example, her check would go up to $2,000 a month. If she was younger than her full retirement age when he died, her check would go up to that higher amount, once again reduced a little bit for each month she's younger than that age. Widows and widowers can start drawing benefits as early as age 60 on their deceased spouse record. Before I go on to the government pension offset, any questions about that quick overview of the benefits in general there? Yes?
What about if there's a divorce?
Okay. It could be a husband too. Let's just say a divorced wife. It could be a husband too, same for men or women. A divorced wife can draw benefits on her ex-husband's record if they are married at least 10 years, if she's unmarried at the time she applies for benefits, and if she meets all the same requirements a current wife or widow has to meet. Not be due more based on her own work, be at least 62 for wives or 60 for widows. If an ex-wife does receive benefits on her ex-husband's record, her checks do not affect anything he or a current wife or widow might receive. Their checks don't affect anything she'd receive. She draws independently.
So I could start drawing when my ex reaches what age?
62, if you've been divorced at least 2 years. But now, we haven't talked about government pension offset. Part of your pension offset what you do on your ex's record too, just like it does on a current spouse. So we haven't got to that part yet. So, yes? Well, that's what the widows are. That's the widows. Yeah. The survivor's benefits include children, what I mentioned right at the start, and widows and widowers. That's what the survivor's benefits are. Includes both of those. Oh, yes. Right.
Full benefits. So I could pull on my spousal benefits or?
No, you have
just
to take
mine?
your own first, remember?
Take my own first?
Yeah, if he's living, you have to take your own first.
Right.
And that offset's what you can draw on his record. So if you're due more than half of his on your own, you just draw your own, because it's based on half when he's living, remember?
Because he makes a whole lot more.
Yeah, but we haven't got the government pension offset law. Remember, it's, anything you do on your spouse record is reduced by your own Social Security. It's also going to be reduced by part of your pension. We haven't got to that yet, so hang on here.
Okay.
Because you're probably not going to be able to draw anything on his record when
Okay.
he's living anyway, more than likely. Okay, let's talk about that government pension offset. If you get a pension based on work not covered by Social Security, like your pension from the city here, from TMRS, part of that pension is going to offset anything you do on your spouse's Social Security record as a wife or husband or widow or widower. And to talk about that, let's just talk about people paying their Social Security first. Talk about that couple I mentioned, talk about widow's benefits. They're both drawing their Social Security. He's drawing $2,000 a month. She's drawing $1,400. He dies. She does not get her full $1,400 check plus his full $2,000 check. Her own benefit offsets what she can draw on his record. So he passes away. She continues to get her $1,400 check. She just gets the difference, $600 in this case, added to it. Her check totals $2,000, $1,400 Social Security on her own, $600 as a widow on his record. Take the same couple, but she passes away first. What happens to his $2,000 check? Nothing. He draws more than her, so his benefit on her record is offset down to zero. So that's why, government pension offset occurs, because just like somebody's Social Security offsets what they're doing on their spouse's record, part of your pension offsets what you can draw on your spouse's record. Because when somebody gets a pension based on work not covered by Social Security, that pension, like your TMRS pension, is paid in place of two things. Your TMRS pension replaces two things. Part of that pension replaces a private company's pension, or like my pension from the federal government. The other part replaces Social Security. Your TMRS pension replaces both. And so easy to prove that that's true. Because if you worked for a place that had both Social Security and a pension, like the federal government where I'm retired from, Some oil companies, some insurance companies still have pensions. They're almost all identical. When they compute your pension in those places, they take your years of service times 1%, times the average of your high 3 or high 5 years of earnings. That's your pension for everybody else. So I worked 33 years for the federal government, so my pension is 33% of what I was making when I retired. You're a 2-to-1 match TMRS City, right? You work 33 years here. Is your pension 33% of what you're earning? Or 43? Or 53? Or 63? Or 73? You're at 100%. You replace your whole salary at about 33 years and some months. Why is your pension bigger than everybody else's? Why is it bigger than my pension? It's supposed to be bigger. Your pension is supposed to be bigger than mine because your pension's replacing those two things. Part of it replaces my federal pension. The other part replaces my Social Security. Your pension replaces both. That's why it's bigger. It's supposed to be bigger. Well, since part of your pension replaces Social Security, then part of it offsets what you can draw on your spouse's record, just like somebody's own Social Security offsets what they can draw on their spouse's record. Now, of course, this law wasn't written for TMRS, wasn't written for Texas teachers, no matter what they try to tell you. This law is written for everybody in the country who works outside of Social Security. While that's only 3% of the workers in the country, that is a bunch of different retirement systems. Just here in DFW alone, I speak to 9 different retirement systems that are outside of Social Security. There's probably more that I don't speak to, but I know of 9 just in this area. So Congress couldn't go write a separate law for all those hundreds of pension systems outside of Social Security around the whole country. So this law makes an assumption. It assumes the Social Security part of your pension is 2/3 of your pension. So this is the way this law works. They take the gross amount of your TMRS pension for anything's held out. The pension's not affected, but to multiply the gross monthly amount by 2/3, what they come up with then is the offset amount. They'll subtract that dollar figure from anything you're entitled to on your spouse's Social Security record. Let's take a nice round number. Let's say somebody retires from the city of Plano, and their TMRS pension, the gross amount is $3,000 a month. 2/3 of $3,000 is, of course, $2,000. $2,000 would be the offset amount. Let's say this is a widow. Her husband dies, and he's drawing $2,800 a month Social Security. Well, $2,800 she might be due as a widow, minus 2/3 of her pension, in this case $2,000, means they would pay her $800 a month widow's benefits. Or more likely, since you are part of the best pension system in the world, by the way, before the pandemic, and once again it will start up, I speak all over the country, at seminars all over the country, and nobody pays as much as TMRS and TCDRS, the same pension for the counties and state. Nobody pays that much. You have the best pension system in the world, basically. So since you do have such a good pension system, if you work here long enough, more than likely for a lot of you, 2/3 of your pension is more than your spouse's Social Security check, right? Just take that same widow. She's drawing $3,000 a month, TMRS. So 2/3 of that is $2,000. $2,000 is the offset amount. Her husband dies, but this time he's drawing $1,800 a month from Social Security. Well, $1,800 minus $2,000 brings you down to 0. So if 2/3 of your pension plus your own Social Security is less than your spouse's Social Security check and they pass away, you get the difference. Their amount minus your own Social Security minus 2/3 of your pension. If 2/3 of your pension plus your own Social Security is more than your spouse's Social Security check and they pass away, then you wouldn't draw anything on their record. So it just depends on their amount and your amounts. On the other hand, if instead of working for the city all those years, you had worked for, say, the phone company, paying into Social Security, making the same amount of money there you made here, you also wouldn't draw benefits on your spouse's record, or at least not full benefits, because your own Social Security check would offset it. So this law just gives you the same offset people have of paying to Social Security, basically. Any questions about that? Okay, let's go on to Medicare then. And it doesn't take me a whole long time to explain what you need to know about Medicare, but it is by far the most important thing I talk about, because you really can't mess up too bad with Social Security. You know, if you got your 40 credits, no matter what you do, you're still going to end up with a guaranteed check coming in the rest of your life that keeps pace with inflation every year with cost of living raises. With Medicare, though, if you don't have your Medicare in place properly and you get a serious illness, you're bankrupt. I don't care how much money you have, you're still bankrupt. It's not hard to do, but you need to make sure you do it, and that's what we're talking about mostly is the Part B of Medicare. So first of all, Medicare's age is still 65. Hasn't gone up for anybody, still 65 for everybody. Two basic parts of Medicare, Part A and Part B. Part A is the hospital insurance. People say Part A is free. It's not free, it's just we pay for it while we're working. A small part of the FICA tax we pay when we work pays for Part A. So we pay for Part A while we're working. We don't have to pay for that once we are retired. Some of you can't just assume it's free for you though, because some of you may not be paying any FICA tax at all. There's three ways you can qualify for Medicare Part A at no cost at age 65. Number one, if you got 40 Social Security credits, that's also 40 Medicare credits. That gives you Part A at no cost at age 65. That takes care of most of it. You got your 40 credits and Part A won't cost you anything. Second, if you don't have 40 credits, but your spouse has 40 credits, even if you can't draw a check on your spouse's record because of the government pension offset law, that does not keep you from getting Medicare Part A on your spouse's record. So if you don't have 40 credits, but your spouse does, then you get Medicare Part A at no cost on your spouse's record. If you are qualifying based on your spouse's credits, you can't get the Medicare Part A at no cost on their record until that spouse with the credits is at least 62 years of age or deceased. So if you don't have 40 credits, but your spouse does, once you're at least 65, and the spouse with the credits is at least 62 or deceased, that point you can get Medicare Part A at no cost based on their work. And the third way may cover everybody anyway, depending on when you start working for the city. The third way you can get Medicare Part A at no cost is if you were hired by the city April 1st, 1986 or later. If you were hired by the city April 1st, 1986 or later, you don't pay the 6.2% Social Security part of the FICA tax, but you do pay the 1.45% Medicare portion of the FICA tax. When you pay Medicare FICA tax only, you earn something called Medicare-only credits. Do that for 10 years, get 40 Medicare-only credits, that gives you Part A at no cost at age 65. Or somebody had a combination of, say, 20 Medicare-only credits, 20 Social Security credits, as long as they add up to 40, that gives them Medicare Part A at no cost. So 40 Social Security credits, spouse with 40 credits, hired by the city April 1st, 86 or later, that will all get you Medicare Part A at no cost. Is there anybody here who won't qualify one of those three ways for their Medicare Part A? Good, because if there was, I'd say go out and get your 40 credits. So that's Part A. Now, Part A just pays the hospital bill itself when you're in the hospital. So doctor bills and outpatient treatment, those are paid for by Part B of Medicare. And when I say Part B covers doctor bills, that's all doctor bills. If you've been in the hospital recently, then you know when you get out, you get the hospital bill in the mail, then you get bills from all the doctors you saw in the hospital, then you get bills from doctors you didn't even see. Since those are doctor bills, Part A does not cover those. Those are still paid for by Part B. So Part B covers all doctor bills in or out of the hospital and outpatient treatment. This is the important part right here. Part B does have a cost. It's got a premium, which this year is $148 a month, $148 a month. They just hold that out of your Social Security check each month, or if you're not drawing Social Security, there's a variety of ways you can pay for it, with withdrawal from your bank account, credit card, write them a check. You have lots of choices. Since Part B has that option, has that cost, has that premium, it is a free country. You do have the legal right to turn down Part B. But don't write that down and don't quit listening until you hear the flip side of that coin. The flip side of that coin is, it is a free country. You do have the legal right to bankrupt yourself. Because unless you're still working past 65 and covered by the health insurance from your employer, unless that's the case, you've got to have Part B in place. We'll talk about that one exception. working past 65 for the city, you might not need Part B then. But except for that, you got to have Part B in place at age 65. So if you're retired from where you have your health insurance at 65, if you're self-employed at 65, if you're working for an employer of less than 20 employees, any of those situations, Medicare's primary, you got to have your Medicare Part B in place for a lot of reasons. A lot of reasons you don't want to turn down Part B Medicare when you're retired, self-employed, or working for a very small employer. Number one, $148 a month has to be a great deal, right? Anybody here want to start an insurance company and insure people who made 65 to 100 whatever for doctor's bills for $148 a month? Well, of course not. That is only 1/4 the cost of the premium. The federal government pays the other 3/4. So every month somebody pays $148 for their Part B Medicare. For that same one person, for that same 1 month, the government pays $444 for their Part B. We pay 1/4, the government pays 3/4. Now, if somebody has income above $88,000 for an individual or $176,000 for a couple, they don't get the full 75% subsidy from the government, so they pay more than 1/4 the cost of Part B's premium. Those amounts are higher than $88,000 for an individual or $176,000 for a couple. But this is the deal. Social Security does not know how much money somebody's making this year or even last year. The last year they know how much money everybody made is 2 years ago. So they always base that higher Part B premium on somebody's income 2 years before. So this year they're using somebody's 2019 income to see if they have to pay a higher premium, next year 2020 income, and so on. But if somebody's income goes down in the last 2 years because they retired or became widowed, they can ask they base that premium on current income not 2 years ago. So if you and your spouse have good jobs, you're making more than that much money, you retire, you file for your Medicare Part A, and then you get a letter after that saying, based on your income 2 years ago, we have to charge this higher premium. If your income's gone down because of retirement, be sure and call Social Security up and let them know, because they don't know why your income went down unless you tell them, and you might not have to pay that higher premium. There are a few other reasons, if your income goes down because of a few other reasons, that you can still not have to pay the higher premium. They don't apply very often, but they do list all of them on the letter that they send you so you can look and see if something else might apply. Retirement is the big one, though. Income going down because of retirement, and then becoming widowed is the next. Any questions about that? That's everything there. That figure, I think that's everything, yeah. Interest, dividends, royalties, pensions, rental, everything. That one's everything. Only earned income counts for that other limit we talked about, if you're working in 62. But this one, to see if you have to pay a higher premium, counts everything. Yes, yes. Yeah, I'm not a tax expert, and so I don't know that one. I believe he's going to have to count that as corporation profit too, I believe. But that would be something to ask whoever does your taxes on that one. I try to stay in my lane. Okay, so second reason you don't want to turn down Part B of Medicare. If you're retired at 65 or working for a very small employer, self-employed, this is a big one, because once you're in that position, once you're no longer covered by active employment from, say, the city, then Medicare is your primary payer. And so Medicare pays first, and once Medicare is your primary payer, nobody else will pay anything Medicare to pay for except Medicare. So if you don't take Part B of Medicare in that situation when Medicare is primary, you just made yourself Medicare, which means you'll pay at least 80% of the doctor bills out of your pocket until you get your Part B back. And that could be a lot of money in a very short period of time. I got to this point in a talk I was doing, a gentleman sitting beside me. It was a retirement seminar, and he's retiring from this company. He was going to talk about what it's like to be retired, the adjustment. And he was waiting for me to get finished so he could come up and do his part. I got to this point in my talk, and he raised his hand, told me he was 70 years old. He was doing pretty good then, but the year before he'd been very, very sick. He told me in that one calendar year, Medicare paid $1.3 million in hospital and doctor bills for him. More than half that was doctor bills. He had his Part B, but if he didn't, That would have been his $700,000 approximately to pay, because nobody else is going to pay for it once Medicare's primary. And just in case you think that's just like a once-in-a-whole-country occurrence, you don't have to worry about that happening. That is not the case. People beat that with me all the time. And the record for me so far was set one night here in Plano, speaking at a seminar. I got to this point, a lady raised her hand and said, "That's nothing." She said, "Last year, Medicare paid $2.1 million for my mother in 1 year. That was over $1 million in doctor bills in 1 year. Her mother had Part B. If she hadn't, that'd have been her $1 million bill to pay." I know somebody at Medicare paid, Part B paid $330,000 in 7 days for somebody. So that's the big one. That's why you need to have your Part B in place, except for the one exception we'll talk about in a minute. And the last reason you want to make sure you have your Part B in place, if you're retired, self-employed, or working for a very small employer, is if somebody doesn't take Part B at age 65 in that situation, and then they realize, uh-oh, I've made a huge mistake. So I'm going to run down the Social Security to get my Part B back. They got some good news when they get that office for them, and they got some bad news. The good news is, yes, they can get Part B back if they turned it down when they shouldn't have. But the bad news is they can't get it back today. And of course, they're sick today. That's why they need it back, right? If somebody doesn't take Part B at age 65, when Medicare's primary, to get it back, they have to wait till the first 3 months of a later year to reapply for it. So every year from January 1st to March 31st is an open season, a chance for people who turned down Part B when they shouldn't have to apply to get it back. If they apply for it during that first 3 months, Part B won't start till July 1st for them, and that premium, that $148 a month, will be 10% higher for the rest of their life for each year they should have had Part B and didn't take it. Now, the one exception to that, the one time you don't need Part B, if at age 65 you are working for an employer of 20 or more employees, and you're covered by that employer's health insurance as an active employee, then in that situation, while you're still working past 65 for that employer, Medicare pays second, the employer's group insurance has to pay first. Medicare does not force you to pay for Part B as secondary coverage. So when you turn 65, if you're still an active employee for the city of Plano, you're covered by the city's health insurance as an active employee. You can wait and take Part B when you retire. It'll start right away. There'll be no penalty. Works for your spouse too. Say you're working for the city, got the city's health insurance as an active employee, you got your spouse on that insurance, and your spouse turns 65. That's the same as them working down here. Medicare would be secondary for your spouse until you retire. Your spouse could wait till that point and get Part B right away with no penalty. Yes?
So can't you, so I'm 65 and I have Part A, but I was just thinking about dropping the city's coverage and going on Medicare.
Make Medicare your primary? Yeah. Yeah. You want to put the pencil to it. Well, because you'd have to go buy a Medicare supplement called Medigap policy. You'd have to buy a Part D plan to replace what the city offers you. And also, I'm going to let Fanny take this over, because if she does that, she doesn't qualify for the city's retirement. She can't join the city's Part D plan, can she, or buy the city's Medigap policy if she's not covered at retirement by the city's health insurance?
If you drop the city's insurance and go on to strictly Medicare, then you have to be retired in order to get the supplement. And then your service credits would help you offset that.
So she would lose that if she went off the.
Use your microphone.
Right?
I'm thinking, Julia, I'm thinking it through me. I've never had anybody do that, so I'd have to think about it, but I think you have to be retired.
How many years have you been here? 8. So she wouldn't apply, no service credits would apply,
Yeah.
and then, right, but
But
in
you're
order to
not
get
going to
this,
pay as much for your health insurance through the city of Plano than you are going to pay a lot more for your Part B than you will for just you. Yeah.
Yeah, because
I just have a sister whose husband's on Medicare, and she loves it.
Well, yeah, when you're retired and you don't have the city's portion anymore, yeah, then that case, you
Yeah.
you love being on Medicare, and then you'll have your Medicare pays 80% with Part A and Part B, and then you need a supplemental plan, and then that's gonna pick up the 20%, and so depending upon your supplemental plan, how well it pays, yeah, it's a great deal.
Yeah, see, this is the deal. A lot of people have really bad health insurance with their employer, okay? And so they love to turn 65 and just go with Medicare because the insurance from the employer is so bad. That doesn't apply here, see?
Yeah, yours is a lot cheaper for an individual than it would be.
But some employers, particularly in private industry, I mean, their insurance is so bad that people can't wait to turn 65 because they're still working to go on Medicare and drop that insurance because it costs so much and it's not good insurance. So that's not doesn't apply to you here. Okay, so the one exception, as I said, is if you're working for the city at age 65, covered by the city's health insurance, you don't need to take Part B. Remember to get it though when you do retire, because the month after retirement, if you work past 65 like that, Medicare becomes primary the month after you retire. Got to have your Part B in place then. So if you're going to do that, if you're going to work past 65 like you're doing, I'd encourage you to file for your Part B about 3 months before you retire. That gives Social Security time to get your new Medicare card to you, showing you have Part B by the time Medicare becomes primary. But let's say you don't have 3 months. Let's say you don't have 3 months. Say something happened in your life, all of a sudden you had to retire before you planned to. So you had to retire in October, this month, say, all of a sudden. If you retired in October, you're working past 65, Medicare becomes your primary payer midnight, November 1st, the month after retirement. You'd have till the end of November to file for Part B, have it retroactive back to November 1st, and not have a gap in coverage for doctor bills. I always mention that because if you just read the pamphlets, it says you have 8 months in that situation after retirement to file for Part B, but I don't ever tell anybody about the last 7 months because I don't want anybody to have 1 second's gap in coverage. If you retired in October and waited until November to file for Part B, it wouldn't start till December. You'd have 2 whole months without any coverage for doctor bills. So if you're going to work past 65 like that, the very latest file for Part B by the end of the month after retirement to not have a gap in coverage.
Okay, I apologize because I'm real confused. I worked for the city of Plano for 21 years. I retired from the city of Plano. I now work for another company, but I don't even take their insurance. We have I'm under his insurance. So.
Well, is he still working? Is your husband still working?
Yes.
For an employer of 20 more employees? Okay, then Medicare's secondary for you, and if you're on his insurance, then Medicare's secondary for you until he retires.
But if I continue to work for a few more years, I'm going to be 65 next May.
Right.
Okay, so if I continue to work for a few more years, I've had people tell me, no, you do not, you need to file for Part A and B.
Right. Don't listen to anybody that doesn't work at Social Security. anything your brother-in-law.
Here's the thing, though. You stated something about being an active employee. Okay, define active, because here's the thing I came across with life insurance, okay, is that what was told to me by a life insurance person, someone that I trust very much, was that a key word that, like on a lot of company life insurance policies, they use that, so long as you're an active employee, when things happen or whatever, then you pass away, the insurance will pay. If you're not an active employee, but the problem is that if you're on short-term disability, long-term disability, or, then you are no longer, quote, active.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. If you're on short or long-term disability from an employer, you're still an active employee. And at least as far as, and I don't know anything about life insurance, and it doesn't have anything to do with this. We're talking about health insurance here.
Okay. No, I get that, but it's still those key words, active employee.
Right, that's absolutely. But people, ask Fanny, people on disability are still considered active employees, right, Fanny? For the city of Plano, they're still active employees if they're on disability. Yeah.
Okay.
Some people have told you, you're still working. He's got you on his insurance. You don't need Part B. When you turn 65, all you need is Part A. And then Medicare will be the primary, the city of Plano will be the primary if something happens and you get sick, and Medicare will be the supplemental, okay? So, will be the Part B, actually. So when he retires and he takes you off of his insurance, that's when you need Part B and a supplemental policy. But right now, if he still has you on the plan, when you turn 65, doesn't matter if you're working somewhere else and not taking their coverage. If you're 65, he's got you on the city's plan. All you need is Part A for right now. When he retires and takes you off, then, and you're working and you don't go on to their medical plan, that's when you're gonna need Part B. And, well, yeah, when he retires.
Oh, okay, and then the city has the supplemental plan to Medicare.
We offer 4 different supplemental plans. And you're eligible to get the same plans that he would be eligible for, but you don't have service credits, obviously, that would go, how long were you here?
Yeah, I have 222 service.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. So when you do go on to Medicare, and he's retired and you're retired, then you can pick one of our supplemental plans and you can use your service credits to offset the cost. But until all of y'all are retired, you really don't need Part B, as long as someone's covering you with medical insurance at an employer. Does that make sense?
And don't listen to what your relatives, your coworkers, your
Please
neighbors
don't
say about
listen
Social
to
Security
other
Medicare, because
people.
it's going to be wrong. Anything on Thanksgiving Day, anything your brother-in-law tells you about Social Security Medicare after watching the Cowboys eating turkey will be wrong, okay? Everything your neighbor tells you on the back fence about Social Security Medicare will be wrong.
I can't tell
No
you how many
exception.
stories I've heard that my friend told me.
Right.
No.
Your HR people have all the experience, all the training, your Social Security people, years of experience and training. And so don't listen to somebody who never worked either place, right? Because they don't know what they're talking about. Because they're going to tell you all kinds of things. And they're going to apply their own situation universally, right? You're not in their situation. So, you have a question up here?
Yeah, I just was wondering, when you turn 65,
Yeah.
no matter what, do you need to sign up for Part A? Is that the
You
deal?
don't have to, but you should. Because if you're working for the city still, or Medicare secondary, Part A doesn't cost you anything. You'd have secondary coverage if you had an inpatient hospital stay to what the city pays. City would pay first, Part A would pay second. So you might as well sign up for it because it doesn't cost anything. You don't have to, because if you qualify for Part A at no cost, like you do, you can pick it up anytime you want to. But you might as well take it at 65, because if you had a hospital stay, you'd have secondary coverage to help pay what the city doesn't.
Okay, thank you.
But you don't need Part B to retire, though, of course, right? Yeah.
So Part A covers 100%?
No.
No?
That's the next subject. You want secondary coverage. Between Part A and Part B, usually Medicare pays about 80% of the hospital and doctor bills, like most insurances used to anyway. This is the issue, though. As we get older, those bills get higher and higher. That 20% Medicare doesn't pay can be a whole lot of dollars. Remember I said Medicare paid $2.1 million for that lady's mother in 1 year? That's a lot of money Medicare paid. That's more than her whole extended family paid in total FICA taxes and her whole lifetime's all put together. But if that was 80%, that means Medicare didn't pay about $400,000. That's why I want to have that secondary coverage. And the city of Plano has negotiated secondary coverage for their retirees. And so when you are retired at 65 or over, you can choose one or two paths to go. You can stay with the original Medicare, which means there's no network. You go to any doctor that accepts Medicare anytime you choose. Then Medicare pays first. You buy something called a Medigap insurance policy to pay second. And you buy that from an insurance company to pay second to help control those out-of-pocket costs. So that's original Medicare, no network. Or you can join a Medicare Advantage plan, which is like a HMO. Join a Medicare Advantage plan, then Medicare pays that plan a lot of money to give you your Medicare services. The way that limits your exposure to out-of-pocket cost is you pay the same copay for hospital stays and doctor visits. Whether you have something very cheap and minor wrong with you, something major expensive, you pay the same copay. But there, it's a network. You have to go to their doctors, their hospitals. And the city of Plano has negotiated both Medigap policy, if you want to stay with the original Medicare, and Medicare Advantage plans. And if Eddie told me the price of the part of the Medigap policy, and you're saving about $50, $60 a month, but we wonder what the city's negotiated for you at that point if you want to stay with the original Medicare. Because there's different Medigap plans, some pay more than others. What the city has for you is a Medigap Plan G, which is the best you can buy. And so if you have Part A and Part B of Medicare at retirement, you have what the city offers you, a Medigap Plan G. As far as hospital and doctor bills, each person would not be out more than $203 total for the year in hospital and doctor bills. And the price that you have for it is what you'd have for a very cheap, less coverage Medigap plan if you bought it on the open market.
Most of the time, all of the retirees that are enrolling in Part G, I see that being $127 to start out with. Depending on the zip code, sometimes it can be a little bit more, but I have seen it go up. Plan F was extremely high. They did away with that for anybody that turned 65, 2020, I believe it was. So if you turn 65 after that date, you can't ever get Plan F. But Plan G is just like Plan F. It just has that yearly deductible. And then, like he said, the most you're going to pay is $203. It's a wonderful plan.
Plan G was always a better deal than Plan F anyway because you save more in premiums than the $203 you'd pay in the deductibles over Plan F anyway. So Plan G was always a better deal anyway. And so, but that $127, that's about $50, $60 less than if you went and bought a Plan G plan on the open market. So the city's negotiated a better rate for you. And that's before those credits you were talking about,
For the
too.
service credits. And then we offer 2 Advantage plans. One of them is comparable to Plan F. It has no deductible, no copay. It runs about, and it includes the drug plan, but it runs $400 and something, $421 a month, I think it's going up to in January. So even if you have 30 years of service and you take that $330 away from it, you're still out $100 and something. So we do have another plan that's called a standard plan. It does have a copay, doesn't have a deductible, but it does have a copay. So you could be out of pocket $3,400 if you go on that Advantage plan. We also offer a standalone drug plan, Part D, which you, again, don't have to have, but they will penalize you for the rest of your life if you ever do have to have it.
Yeah, and we were talking about in the first session today, because the Part D plan is more expensive than the average Part D plan. That's because they've got a really big formulary on it. Let's say that you're really healthy when you turn 65 and you're retired from the city and not take anything. You could go pick a very cheap Part D plan because you're not taking hardly medications on it, and that would stop you from having a penalty later. Then every autumn, from October 15th through December 7th, you can change plans for the next year. If in the future you had to start taking more expensive medications, then the city would let you go back to that drug plan
If
at
you've
that
got
point.
$330 worth of service credits or $275, what I would do is I would choose the drug plan and then the Plan G. And then, you know, as it will increase, Plan G increases in January and in July, and then on anniversary dates, but I never see it go up more than $7 to $10. So it's not unbearable. But you can always change things if you take it, what you take when you retire, you can always change it at open enrollment.
But you do want to get secondary coverage because those serious illnesses that cost many, many dollars happen more often than you realize. And as I said, the 20% of the bill Medicare doesn't pay can be a whole lot of dollars in a very short period of time.
And you do want to get a Part D.
And you do want Part D, yeah.
Because if you don't take any expensive medicines now, obviously we don't know from day to day, and if something should happen, you don't want to get caught with no Plan D, and then all of a sudden need it.
Right. Got a question at the top too, Fanny.
Yes, the recommendations that you were just making apply to a retired employee. I was looking at the rates, I'm a spouse, so I was looking at the rates for a spouse, and it seemed to me from looking at that once my wife retires, I'd probably be better off going on Medicare completely and not be on the city plan anymore.
So if you're 65, when when your spouse retires, you have to go on to Medicare. You have to come off the city's plan. So you wouldn't be able to stay on the city's plan anyway. If she retires and you're 65 already, you have to go on to Medicare. You cannot stay on our plan. The only way over 65 can stay on the plan is if they're an active employee or their spouse is working.
Right. I can stay on her plan as long as she's working, even though I'm over 65.
That's correct. But what you were saying was, once she retires.
I have to go on Medicare. Yes. But she can stay on some form of your plan.
Correct, correct, until she's 65.
We did have a question up there. Got it.
Okay, thanks.
On the Plan G that you just described there, is that under the Medigap G? And the drug plan would be similar?
It's United Healthcare. Pardon me?
And the drug plan would be similar to a Part D?
Yes, that is under Aetna.
Separate entity?
Correct.
Yes, yeah.
The drug plan is under Aetna, and the Plan G is through United Healthcare.
And you had said that that cost per month is a little lower than the standard Part F
Yes,
and D that we would experience today?
yes. If you, as a spouse, if you were to go onto Medicare, you're 65 or over, you're on Medicare, you choose Plan G, okay? You can get the same rates that your spouse gets, but the drug plan is kind of pricey. You're not going to have any service credits to offset yours. If you don't have any specialty medications, if you don't take a lot of medications, you can go out to Walgreens or Silver Scripts or some of those Part D places, and you can get one cheaper. But when you have service credits, we try to encourage people to go ahead and get the good one, because you never know when you're going to need the good one. And you can get what we call the good one.
So how can a person get a little more detail in terms of just exactly what Medigap G provides?
If you will email me, I'll send it to you, because I will forget by the time I get back to the office.
But one thing about Medigap G, okay? It pays, on hospital bills, it pays everything Medicare doesn't pay. On doctor bills, you pay the Part B deductible, which is $203 this year. Then it covers everything on doctor bills Medicare doesn't pay. So with Medigap Plan G, other than your premium, which the city's already negotiated a cheaper rate for you, other than that, the most you'd be out would be $203 this year.
The only thing it's not going to pay for is something that Medicare wouldn't pay for.
Right.
So as long as Medicare is paying for it, then your Part G will cover the rest.
I have two questions. Number one, someone said, I don't know how you did it, if you decide to go with the original Medicare, Medicare Advantage plan, once you on those plans and stay there 6 months, when open enrollment, you can switch up.
Well, this is the deal. Technically, you can switch. Let's say somebody starts out with original Medicare because they want choice, okay? So I don't want to be in the network, I'm going to take original Medicare. And then they start talking to their neighbor over the back fence who's in a Medicare Advantage plan and loves it. Talk to them into switching that Medicare Advantage plan. So go to that Medicare Advantage plan. And then they don't like not having choice. They want to go back to original Medicare. Well, most people don't have their employer has not negotiated a Part D Medigap policy for them. An insurance company doesn't have to sell you a Medigap policy unless at the time you're trying to buy it, you've been entitled to Medicare Part B less than 6 months. If you've been entitled to Medicare Part B less than 6 months, You go to an insurance company and tell them, I want to buy your Medigap policy, they can't turn you down or charge you a penny more, no matter how sick you might be. But if you've had Part B in place for yourself more than 6 months, and you go to buy a Medigap policy, they can say, no, you're already sick, we're not going to insure you. So somebody switches, that's for that 6 months that you come, so switches to a Medicare Advantage plan, drops their Medigap, and then after 6 months, they decide they want to go back to regular Medicare. They might not be able to buy a Medigap policy because they don't have that guaranteed right to buy it because they've been entitled to Part B of Medicare more than 6 months. And so they can be turned down if they buy the insurance company if they want to buy that Medigap policy.
But I think from my understanding, if you got a Advantage go to a Advantage plan or with a managed care, if you go to a Advantage plan, you cannot buy G and Gap.
That's right. You can't buy a Medigap
Can't have
policy.
both.
If you had one, you have to drop. If you had one, you have to drop it. And so, see, remember, Medigap is private insurance companies. They want to make a profit. They can't exist without making a profit, right? Okay, so they only have to sell you a Medigap plan if, when you're trying to buy it, at that point you've been entitled to Medicare Part B less than 6 months. Once you've had Part B in place more than 6 months, they can say, no, you're already sick, we don't want you. So that's why somebody, if they join a Medigap, a Medicare Advantage plan, and they've been there more than 6 months, or they've had Part B more than 6 months, if they want to go back to original Medicare, they might not be able to buy that Medigap policy because the insurance company doesn't have to sell it to them if they've had Medicare Part B in place for themselves for more than 6 months.
Okay, so you say after 6 months, you can't switch from, okay, I can't switch from original Medicare.
I didn't say you can't, I just said there's issues with it.
Okay, in the original Advantage plan.
Original Medicare.
What you offer like.
Well, no, you can switch, but this is the thing. Somebody who goes with Medicare Advantage, and then they decide they want to go back to original Medicare. Well, they need to buy a Medigap policy, right? Because they need secondary insurance. The insurance company doesn't have to sell them a Medigap policy if they've had Medicare Part B in place more than 6 months. They might insure them, but they might not. If you go to an insurance company, you tell them, I want to buy your Medigap policy. If you've been entitled at that point to Medicare Part B less than 6 months, they have to insure you, they can't charge you anymore. But if you've been entitled to Part B of Medicare more than 6 months, you go to an insurance company and say, I want to buy your Medigap policy. If you're already sick, they can say, no, we don't want to insure you, you're already sick.
But they can all change it, open enrollment, if they're not happy with what they have.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's not necessarily irrevocable, but it can be because somebody might not be able to go back to original Medicare because they might not be able to buy a Medigap policy.
So,
Okay, I think I got that, but that's very confusing, okay?
Oh, it's just it. Insurance companies don't want to insure sick people, do they? Because they cost them money. They have to sell you a Medigap policy only if, when you're trying to buy it, you have had Medicare Part B in place for yourself less than 6 months.
That means if I'm gonna stick with the original Medicare, I have to get that supplemental plan, I know how to get D, okay?
Right.
I have to get a supplement, if I decide to get G, right?
Right.
Then I said, okay, I don't want original Medicare no more. 6 months later, or a year later, next year, open enrollment, I want to go to
Medicare Advantage,
plan.
right.
Because their premium is zero in the back of the
Right, right.
I want to jump over there because it's cheaper.
Right.
So then I said, well, I don't like this because I had to go get approved. Get all these. I can't go to any doctor I want to unless I get approved.
Right.
Okay, I want to go back to Medicare G plan.
Right.
I can't.
They may not sell it to you because they don't have to sell it to you because you've been entitled to Medicare Part B more than 6 months. And they can turn you down.
Typically, though, you can change it open enrollment
Yeah, they're pretty much sticky. You pretty much stuck in that.
until, for the year,
It can be.
for the year.
If you've been, they might.
If you're sick, they could. They could charge you more. I've not heard anybody that's not been able to change, but we very seldom have anybody that switches back and forth. But I do have people that are sick, and their premiums are much more. I've got someone that's on Plan F, and his premium for Part F is over $400 a month. And that's because he's got some issues, and he lives in a rural community.
But if you had bought that plan within 6 months of first getting Medicare Part B in place, they couldn't charge him anymore like that.
with all your experience, what's the easy answer?
How many service credits do you have?
Well, I have 26 years.
Get Plan G and stick with it. Pardon? No, that's United Healthcare.
My understanding, you got, another Medicare G plan is called high deductible Medicare.
We don't have that.
Yeah.
I don't have that.
No.
Where, okay, so they said the premium is like $40, $50, but you're gonna pay like 20% of your copay, right? So when you reach your, if you don't go to the doctor that much, you could just pay the premium and pay your 20% copay until you go to the doctor. But once you reach that deductible, if something major happens, you reach that deductible, then
Yeah.
you can pay, then it reaches and pay 100%.
We do have the Aetna Advantage Standard Plan that's like that. It includes a drug plan. It's $255, something like that.
In that standard plan,
That's the Aetna Advantage Plan, and it's 250, I think it's I can't remember what it's going up to, 251. But the most out-of-pocket you would be $3,400 a year, because you do have to pay the 20% copay.
plus the 148.
You can't get around the 148.
That's a lot.
But the Aetna, there is another Aetna plan, right? That more expensive one. That's the one.
That's 421, uh-huh.
And is that as good? I mean, I've loved it so far.
Yeah.
That's as good as the.
It's equivalent to Plan F, has no deductible, no copay. But depends on how much you're paying out of pocket every month and how many service credits you've got.
220, 240, something like that, service credits.
Yeah. I mean, if you're happy with it and your doctor takes it, it's great, and you don't mind the premium you're having to pay. Usually people are trying to get the most economic plans that they can. So if you're happy, I would stay where I was. It's, it's more expensive, but.
Yeah. Okay, just want to make sure it hadn't changed when I was.
One more question, I gotta stop. Okay, so you say we use our service credit. We leave, like I had asked you, I leave the city and say I don't want the city plan anymore for now. And then I come back, open enrollment, and I say, okay, I want the city plan, and you say I can, when I come back, just say a year or 2 year, come back, and I say I want to use my service credits.
You can use them.
Okay, so my service credit, so you say my service credit is for life?
As long as the risk pool doesn't change anything, you've got your service credits for life.
I can leave, come back, so without
Yes.
over there, that's too high.
Yes,
I'll go back to the city.
yes.
Okay, okay.
You got it. All these people, my witness.
I couldn't find it nowhere. I just wanted to know. Okay. Yeah.
One of your statements was that there was something equivalent to a Part F.
That's the Aetna Premium Plan. It's got the equivalent of Plan F, and it has a drug plan, but it's also $421 a month.
If you elected or decided the next year or sometime you decided your preference was to go back to Part F, you can do that.
That's what he was saying. If you take that premium plan right now, then the only time that you probably could go to the Medigap Part G would be at open enrollment. And then there's no guarantee you're going to have a cheaper price, because as he was saying, you could be not healthy at that time, and they may not give you the same price they would when you originally were turning 65. Does that make sense? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Fanny. And what is the premium for that Plan F Medigap?
If you were over 65 in January 2020, you can no longer get on Plan F.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Plan
Plan G.
G, I see it running about 127, 130 right now.
That's all. I don't have anything else prepared for us. Any other questions? Going back to Social Security or anything else? We go over here. She's bringing the mic down right here to you. Okay.
So if you retired at 62, and in 6 months, you're going to turn 65. When do I need to start getting?
Okay, are you drawing Social Security yet?
Yes.
Okay, this is the only time Medicare is automatic, but if you're drawing your Social Security before age 65, They will send your Medicare card to you automatically about 6 to 8 weeks early. They're gonna assume you want both Part A and Part B, which you do. So just keep the card they send you. You automatically have both Part A and Part B. They'll start taking the premium out of your check the month you turn 65. If you were not drawing Social Security, say you wanted to wait until full retirement age or something, if you're not drawing Social Security, then 3 months before 65, you'd file for Medicare A and B. But if you're already drawing your Social Security, just keep the card they send you automatically, and you're good.
What about for the city? What about to purchase the additional Medigap?
So are you retired?
She's
My
retired.
husband's
yeah.
retired, yeah.
Your husband's retired. So once you turn 65, are you on our plan?
My husband, but yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so once he turns 65, you'll get a letter from us. He will. Is he an employee or a retiree?
Retiree.
Retiree. He'll get a letter from us telling him that at age 65, he has to come off the City of Plano plan. And at that time, we'll send you everything that we have about the plans that we offer, the cost of the plans. And we send it out usually about 90 days in advance because we like to tell everybody, okay, in 90 days, you need to go ahead and apply for Social Security and Medicare now.
Okay.
Well, Medicare, let me rephrase that, Medicare at age 65.
But
And
he's
right
already-
now, it's taken a long time. So if you are within 90 days of turning 65, I would go ahead and hurry up and get out there and at least get my A, because it's taken them a long time. And if you're planning on retiring, we can't put you on a supplemental plan unless you've got Part A and Part B. So if you're thinking about retiring, you need to call them and tell them you need Part B, Part A and Part B, and tell them to start this coverage, the Part B's coverage, the month after you retire. So if you're planning on retiring January 4th, then you want to start it on February 1st. But they've got a backlog.
My question has to do with how they compute Social Security benefits.
Okay.
If you've got, you're getting ready to retire, you're 65, and you've got Social Security, so I've got enough credits, to pay 40 some odd credits.
Right.
I'm saying to myself, I haven't worked on an overtime job for, say, the whole past year, the year before. Would it benefit me for a couple months before I retire to get a few more credits for this year? Would that help?
No. Credits have one purpose only. Do you have enough to draw the check? Other than that, they have nothing to do with the amount of the check. The amount of your Social Security retirement benefit is based on your highest 35 years of earnings. Highest 35. Before they pick out those high 35, they go back and adjust all your past year's earnings for inflation. Turn your past year's earnings into current dollars. Let me show you how that works. Let's say somebody worked in 1975 and made $16,000. That does not sound like a high salary, does it? But in 1975, $16,000 was a great salary. You could buy 2 brand new Corvettes and throw in a Camaro for $16,000 in 1975. They turn that $16,1975 into current dollars, that's over $100,000. They do that with every year of your earnings and then pick out the high 35. Now, if you don't have 35 years of Social Security covered earnings because you work for the city, then they're going to add zeros in. They're going to use 35 years, add zeros in. So if you, in that situation, any work you do is going to replace a 0 year would raise your check. But over 35 years, just making and you said working overtime, you don't work for the city then, you work for some place else? Or are you talking about doing some self-employment on the side?
We work for the hospital, who pays into Social Security.
Gotcha, okay. Yeah, I mean, it would raise your check, maybe if you don't have 35 years, then every dollar's going to count that you make if you don't have 35 years of Social Security covered earnings. But over 35 years, making a little, divided by 35 years, make a little extra for a couple months isn't going to make much difference in the check. Very little at that point, because basically they take all of those they take your high 35 years of earnings, divide it by the number of months of 35 years, which is 420, before you even start the computation process. You can see if you just made a couple of thousand extra, divided by 420, that's just $5 going to that stuff. So it's not going to make a whole lot of difference. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
If you're retired and you travel overseas and you have Medicare A and B and the supplement for the city, will they consider an accident claim or it's just within the USA?
Part G includes coverage outside the country for just emergencies, but Part G, if you're taking the Medigap plan, Plan G, that includes emergencies outside the country for a temporary stay, like a trip, a vacation outside the country. If you gotta stay over there for a long time, though, if you're gonna live overseas, then no, then you'd need to live in a country that's gonna insure you with universal health insurance or buy some kind of insurance or something there, because Medicare itself doesn't pay anything outside the United States.
Just for a visit.
Yeah.
And if you have an accident, you can then, you will submit to Medicare first?
No, Medicare doesn't cover, no, that's only through your Medigap policy. Medicare doesn't cover any services outside the United States, ever.
Supplemental insurance covered part of that.
Yeah, and you might look at the coverage. If you want to buy some additional travel insurance, I mean, you can look and see what it's going to cover. It's in your policy, and just decide if that's enough, or do you want to buy some additional travel insurance to look at that.
Social Security. Okay, right now, my husband, receiving Social Security.
Okay.
I'm trying to wait till my full age Social Security.
Okay.
Get it, okay? Even if I file now or my full age, I know they're gonna have to cut mine because of
The windfall.
whatever. So even if I file now, 65 or 66 in 4 months or whatever, how would that affect, spouse's benefit or survival,
Well, if your husband passes away before you, then they're gonna take his amount, subtract from that your own Social Security. So if it was less, that'd be less to subtract from it. But also subtract from that amount an amount equal to 2/3 of your TMRS pension. And if your TMRS pension, if 2/3 of your TMRS pension plus on Social Security is less than his check, and he passes away first, they'd pay you his amount minus your own Social Security minus an amount equal to 2/3 of your pension. Probably not. Not a whole lot. I mean, if you're, they're subtracting the amount of your check. So if you had $100 less because you took it early, that might be 100 more you draw on that, but the total's going to still be the same. Yeah. Yes. Right.
After you start collecting.
Yeah.
Could
Yeah.
that possibly increase
Yeah. They always use your highest 35 years of earnings. So. Yeah, so if you don't have Social Security covered earnings in 35 years, which you probably don't, since you work for the city, then any work you do is going to replace a 0 year, and they always use your high 35. So if you work after you're drawing benefits, that can still raise your check. Not going to raise it a whole lot, but every little bit helps, right?
Okay, and you just find out when your check comes.
Yeah, what'll happen is that when all the W-2s get posted, so like W-2s for 2020, well, a lot of people have more than one job in a year. So there's about 350 million W-2s to post. Most people work for small employers that report on paper. So it takes till almost the end of this year for all 2020 to get on there. But once they got all those posted, then they go back and the computer runs all the people who are drawing checks to see if that might increase their check. So it's actually about a year later they actually get the raise. But it's effective back to the January after. So 2020 earnings, for example, affect your check in January. Might be toward the end of the year before you get that money, but they'll pay you back to the first of the year.
You don't have to delay drawing your Social Security check because you think
No,
you might work
absolutely not, absolutely not.
After you hit your full retirement age.
That's right. And something else kind of on that line, except kind of the flip side of that, the cost of living raises that are automatic with Social Security, you start getting those when you turn 62, even if you're not drawing your benefits yet. So by waiting to draw your checks, you're not losing out on the cost of living raises. They're already being included in there every year once you turn 62. Yeah.
What do you mean?
Well, 100,000's higher than, it's the highest 35 years of earnings after they adjust them for inflation.
So they add all 35 years together, or?
Yeah, well, then that's when that 7-hour session that I talked about earlier starts right there. That's where it gets
I
complicated.
just wanted to make sure it wasn't like 1 year, they take the highest year.
No, the highest 35 years of earnings.
And add it all up.
After they adjust them for inflation.
Got it.
Pick out the high 35, add them all up, and then it gets complicated, but yeah, then they add them all up.
Thank you.
Any others? Well, once again, thank you for your attention. Thanks, Fanny, for having me come out here. You're welcome.